Half a decade ago, HBO released a little show called Game of Thrones, which propelled novelist George R.R. Martin into the spotlight for anyone who's aware of television. Well, there's a brand new show on SyFy called Nightflyers, also based on a George R.R. Martin novella. Is it as good as Game of Thrones? We have our take right after this.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
I wanna fly away.
He's a classic.
Classic. Good old Lenny Kravitz.
Yes.
Speaking of classic, guys, welcome to TV Pilot Reviews here on AfterBuzz TV. My name is Jeff Graham. If this is your guys' first time tuning in, this is a show where we review Hollywood's hottest new pilots and let you know whether or not you should pass or play on them. I'm not alone because Linda Antweet's sitting right here.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
Linda, I'm pretty excited to talk about this episode specifically, but before we do, I want to let you guys know that this is a pilot review show. This is not an after show. As of right now, we actually don't have an after show scheduled for Nightflyers, even though we cover so much sci-fi content. So based on our reactions to this pilot coverage in particular, we may consider launching one. I'm sure you saw, but SyFy's releasing it in a very atypical way.
Yeah, it's crazy. Every single day, 10 episodes
Every single
over the next
day,
2
baby.
weeks.
So I think if we do end up covering Nightflyers, we'll do some kind of collective review rather than a traditional after show, because by the time you sneeze, the show's over, which is kind of how TV works nowadays. Anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're doing Sunday through Thursday, and then after their run on SyFy, they're going to be on Netflix.
Nice. We will talk all about sort of the distribution strategy behind the show when we get into our coverage. Real quick, guys, I mentioned we're covering SyFy's Nightflyers, which just premiered a couple days ago, based on the novella by George R.R. Martin, who, of course, you know from Game of Thrones, but he's actually worked in some television and movies before Thrones. That was just really the project that launched him into media stardom.
Yep.
This show feels a little similar to a show we covered 2 weeks ago, huh?
A lot similar. I was thinking that.
It's like, didn't we just
I have a lot of
do
thoughts,
this?
Jeff.
I have a lot of thoughts, too. But before we get, just so quickly, guys, it's following a crew of 8 people on a ship escaping a Earth that they have destroyed to potentially connect with an alien nation who can maybe help them. And there's a telepathic guy.
Yeah.
And that's the show. We have a trailer that we're going to watch, and then we'll talk about our take on the show. So stay tuned as we watch this trailer.
Will you be gone a long time?
Yeah. We're going farther than anyone's ever gone.
Why does it have to be you?
Because I'm the one who found them.
Try and catch me. Come on.
Our world is dying, but maybe we can save our families. Save our home. The Nightflyer is our only chance.
And that's what scares me.
Ready to break orbit. Systems ready, sir.
Waited my whole life for this.
There was a malfunction during the launch.
3 men are down.
It wasn't an accident.
This mission faces a threat you do not understand.
That was no malfunction. It wanted me.
Shut it down.
I can't get control back. Our friends are dying.
There is something wrong with this ship.
Black inside my mind, heartbeats out of time.
There was something.
Lost and out of place.
It was alive.
Time is paralyzed, but I'm wide awake.
Don't move.
Daddy?
Silence in the
This is a warning.
taking hold of me.
Do not bring the Nightflyer back to Earth.
Closing in.
We're all gonna die up here. I don't know what you are, but I will find out.
Okay. So that's the trailer.
I gotta say, usually the trailers like suck me in. That was not one of my favorite trailers.
I feel about the trailer the way I kind of feel about the show, which, as you can tell from my tone already, this was not my favorite show, unfortunately. Let's get into our overall thoughts, guys. Before we dive in, we are going to give you our overall take on the show at the beginning. It's going to be a spoiler-free sort of take on the show, but then as we go further, we will be talking about specifics in the pilot, so the longer you listen, the more likely you are to get spoilers, but we will alert you before we dive into spoilers. There's a moment in that trailer where they say, something's wrong with the ship. Something's happening. Something. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's how I feel about this show. Like, there's something.
Something going on.
Something's happening.
Not sure what.
I just feel like I kind of, and weirdly, I sort of enjoyed this pilot more than I thought I would. I liked it more than Origin, which I think is going to be a hot take because people were not thrilled with our Origin coverage from a couple weeks ago. I think people liked it more maybe than I did. But I think my issue with this show is it felt surprisingly unoriginal to me. I feel like I've seen a lot of this before, and it really just feels like we're trafficking tropes from other sci-fi projects. And yeah, I feel like something ominous is happening, and I want a little more specificity to latch onto because this feels like maybe a very good student film to me.
Wow.
But that's just me, and I'd be curious to hear your take, Linda.
Overall, I thought visually it was great.
Yeah, it looks good.
It was definitely like sci-fi. I thought that, like I think the concept, I was like, didn't we just review this show like 2 weeks ago?
I know. I was like,
lost in a ship with some entity that's, I don't know.
Ominous entity.
So I thought that was interesting. And then I was like, okay, well, let me just watch it and go through it. And then, of course, I wanted to research it a little bit. And I thought, you know what? I've seen these things, but I'm not sure what. And it nailed it. Like, they talked about Space Odyssey and Zero Gravity.
Yeah.
And Solaris, where the ship is haunted and the crew members experience bizarre visions, which is the same. Psycho with the like all of this stuff. So it's like, well, I don't know. This is George R.R. Martin.
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't it be like, whoa?
I will also say that, so you guys know, this was written in the 80s, I believe.
It was.
Yeah.
The novella was written in the 80s, and actually, interestingly, the show is based off of the movie that was adapted from the novella and not the actual source material. So, and George R.R. Martin's association with the show is very loose. We'll talk more about the specifics of the development in the show, but I think his name is on the show, and that's about it, which doesn't shock me. It sounds like we're kind of on the same page. On one hand, I did kind of enjoy this show. I think it's, again, really interestingly shot, especially for a sci-fi show.
Oh, yeah, and I have some stuff when we get into that development. But I agree. I think I was entertained.
I was, too.
And I remember even with Game of Thrones, that first episode, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. And now this is like one of my favorite shows.
Right.
So I'm wondering maybe there was laying the foundation, because I do know about this pilot, which is something that I don't normally like, is when they throw you in and you don't really know what's going on.
Right.
And I felt that the whole hour I was watching it.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? Like,
I know.
I'm getting to know the characters, but why do I care about the characters? Because I'm like, what? And the flashbacks, like, there's so much, Jeff. The flashbacks. Okay, you start in present day, and then it's a flashback, and then it's you forward to 2093, then it's a flashback. Just lay the story for me first. How about that?
I agree, and I do. You mentioned that we're getting to know the characters, but that's another kind of issue I have with this show is we're getting to know the characters in terms of what they do on the ship. It's like, this is the tree guy, and this is the computer girl, and this is like the sexy shower girl. But like, I don't think I learned anything about who these people are besides that one guy has a family.
Right.
And it's tough. Like with Game of Thrones, even though the first episode is boring, you can like be like, this person's personality is this, and like this person's interests are this. Whereas really the only defining character traits of anyone we met in the show is the thing they're doing on the ship.
Right.
So it's hard for me to speak on this show in terms of any character development because...
Which is what, though? That's the whole thing. So
exactly.
What is the thing you're doing? Are you this L1, or are you saving mankind? Like,
yeah, I think it's tough for me. I don't necessarily trust that the show is going to give me all of these answers because, like you mentioned, it's very shrouded in mystery right now. We're given a lot of imagery that's unreliable. We don't know whether or not it's hallucinations or if it's something that's being given to us by this empath that we'll talk about in a little bit. And unless the show is really bent on answering those questions for us, I find stuff like this very frustrating. And I gotta say, based on this first episode, I don't believe right now that the writers have our best interest in mind as an audience. But that's just based on the pilot. We've only seen one, and I was at least more entertained than I often am with these like slow burn maudlin shows.
Yes, I was definitely entertained. Definitely entertained by it.
I don't think it needed to be 60 minutes long.
It did not.
Yeah.
At all.
It's so nice when we watch these half-hour shows. And then you get to you're like, if this is like 65% the length of a full feature film, a little bit more needs to happen.
That's what I was about to say. If you're going to use 60 minutes of my time, then, not only lay the foundation, have more happen.
Yeah.
Have me more engaged. Because I did walk away after the hour still really not knowing what the purpose was.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get into specifics, but I just have some frustrations with shows like this when it's like, well, we'll talk about it. Right now, those are our overall thoughts on the show. I think it was exciting, and it had interesting visual imagery. I liked it more than Origin, which is remarkably similar. I was like, is this really another 8-person crew struggling with an ominous presence in space?
Why, yes, it is, Jeff.
It's like you have, in an era of peak TV, it is incredible that within 2 weeks, there are shows with almost identical premises. They're different, but remarkably similar, in my opinion.
I mean, you're in space, you're trapped on a planet, and there's something out to get you.
Right.
Pretty much, the basics.
Similar, yeah.
But what I did, because you're talking about shooting, Territory Studios, they did screens for this show, which I think is really interesting. It's like on-set graphics. So instead of that CG, I always get it wrong, CG, right?
Yeah.
It was on set so the actors could actually see the screens. And they're known for Blade Runner 2049, Avengers Infinity War. And I was like, okay, I see that.
So I think, and guys, we're going to get into development right now. So this is your spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
And you know what?
Spoiler alert!
We didn't pass or play, so let's quickly pass or play, and then I want to hop right in that development. I'm personally passing on this show, but I think people who consistently like SyFy's programming and who love intense space dramas will like this show.
Yeah, I don't have 10 hours for this. So
right.
I'm going to say I personally pass, but I'm going to recommend it if you love sci-fi, if you are a hardcore George R.R. Martin fan, if you're a thriller fan, then yeah, you should absolutely watch this.
Yeah.
Get into it.
And we'll get into it, but I did appreciate the diversity of the representation of this crew from an actor standpoint, even if the characters don't have a ton of diversity, at least literally the physical representation of what we're getting on the ship is interestingly diverse.
And I wonder too if that has to do with shooting, because I'm starting to see that even the show that we covered that was similar, and I can't even think of it, Origin, it was shot in Europe, and this one was shot, same, in Ireland. And I'm wondering if that makes a difference in casting.
It might make a difference in casting, and also I'm sure they're just shows like this, I think, have to bank on a global appeal.
Right.
I feel like space is one of those thematic topics that when television or movies explores, it can really capture a global audience. Like both of these shows don't have a distinctly American bent. So if I'm from Poland, I'm still interested in space travel.
I get what you're
There's
saying.
a universality about space that might appeal kind of globally versus just an American audience.
Yeah, I think Americans should open their mind too.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Just so you guys know, Linda's our resident Canadian on the panel. Okay, I like that you mentioned this screen replacement thing. That's super interesting. So I think what you're saying is most of the time on sets like this, the actors will be on a sound stage.
Yes.
But like the windows of the spaceship will just be green screens.
Exactly.
And they'll do screen replacement of space. But in this, they actually have monitors depicting
the graphic on set.
That's pretty nifty.
And they did like 1,200 of them.
Wow.
And then I was reading about it because, I'm a nerd like that. But as they made changes, they had to continue to make new screens. So there were like thousands made for the show. And
I'm sure that's much more immersive for the cast to act with.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nightflyers, as I mentioned, the original source material from the 80s comes from George R.R. Martin, who's kind of considered like our generation's Tolkien.
Yep.
He most famously created Game of Thrones. Not the show, the book series. But he is a notable world builder.
Agreed.
This show was announced in 2016. And in 2017, it was announced that the show wouldn't be based on the actual book, but the 1987 film adapted from the book, and that George R.R. Martin would not be very involved with the show. He's fairly busy doing another show with HBO right now.
Well, yeah, and can I just, since you mentioned it, because I wrote it down too, because I thought we're really in his time. So the prequel to Game of Thrones on HBO, that's what he's involved with as well. But Hulu has 2 shows based on his wild card novels that are almost finished development. And then, of course, the SyFy Nightflyers, this show right here.
He's becoming like Stephen King.
Yes.
He's getting all his properties adapted. Good for him.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I like George R. You've interviewed George R. R. Martin.
I have interviewed him. He's awesome, actually.
Yeah, check out that interview with Linda interviewing George R. R. Martin.
But I'm wondering, too, since we're talking about him, if he feels, because his show Game of Thrones was such a success, that he feels any additional pressure. Because, I mean, I didn't even see anything about Nightflyers. I was like, Nightflyers, what?
I know.
And this pilot, just have your name associated with it, like, that's your property, like you said. You want it to be, I don't know, I just feel like that's a real pressure to have. If it's not good and it tanks.
I know. It's an interesting, especially following what's widely considered to be one of the greatest shows of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. If this were George R. R. Martin's first entry into television, I don't know if Game of Thrones would exist.
Exactly. Would he be the success that he is now?
I don't know. But I think I've kind of gotten the impression he's okay with the show using his name, but that's about it.
Okay.
That's kind of what I've gathered. If you have another take, let us know in the comments because we'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, let's get into some specifics about this show.
Okay.
Here's my biggest gripe. Right now, the issue is, like, with a lot of horror, there's definitely horror influences. There's kind of like, you know, a crazy person whose telepathic influences over the environment are problematic in the same way of like a Carrie, or we see this a lot in horror where one twisted mind can affect the minds of the people around them. My problem is, why don't they just like kick this guy off the ship?
Why is he on the ship?
So, okay, he's on the ship because once they reach the aliens, in case the aliens don't speak English, they might need a telepathic guy to speak alien language.
Okay, so that doesn't make sense to me from what I watch, because he seems like he's the enemy.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, throw this guy off the ship.
So how is he possibly ever going to help you once you get there?
Right. I know.
He's causing the problems on the ship right now.
It's good. We're a spoiler. We already alerted.
You know, trying to like take out the 8-member team. I don't see how he's ever going to help you.
I so agree. And I get so frustrated by like doctor or psychologist characters who's like, give him a chance.
Right.
I'm like, lady, he just decapitated our friend. I'm like, we just have to think twice about this stuff.
For real.
And that's my whole thing is I'm like, so what I'm hearing is we might need this guy to talk to the aliens, therefore keep him? Like, it just seems like at this point the stakes are too high.
And I mean, you have that lady who is, what was she? She was modified to survive space travel. If you have someone that's modified to survive space travel, can you modify someone to like speak to the aliens? Or why don't you get there and see what happens?
That's what I think. If we need the guy, we'll go back.
We'll go back
and get him.
At least we'll have our safety.
Right. Frank Sulecki, who's in our chat right now. Frank, thanks for joining. Says, I think as time goes on, we'll start to get to know more about the individual characters on the ship. Fair enough. And if you watch episode 2 and 3, you'll start to learn a bit more about what's happening, which is good to know. And he compared this to Origin as well, which we covered a couple weeks ago. Says, I liked Origin, but this show is much better visually and story-wise.
Oh, for sure, Frank. Visually, absolutely.
And story-wise, too, I feel like I'm getting more. Even if I'm equally frustrated, I feel like at least it's a little more dynamic what I'm seeing happen on this show. So, Frank... Thanks for jumping in.
I'd be interested if Frank is watching it every single day, because that's another thing we should talk about.
Yeah, Frank, let us know how you're consuming this show, because we do like our tangents about how media is distributed on this
Well, this is
show.
new. For me, at least.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit to this every single day for like Sunday, 5 days a week.
Let's talk about that after we cover a bit more about the show, but I definitely want to have that discussion.
All right.
I think these performances are actually pretty strong.
I agree.
This cast, it's kind of fun. I don't know any of these people.
How about that Gretchen lady? She's very familiar to me.
Who is she playing?
She's playing the psychologist, Agatha.
Oh, she does look familiar.
Really familiar. Like, she was in Big Things. Bree probably knows. But I liked her as that therapist that I wanted to punch in the face.
Exactly. It's a good way to put it. I liked her. I get frustrated with characters by this who are like, you're not seeing him for who he really is.
Don't corner him and he won't kill you.
Right.
Well, yeah, no, he's still going to kill you.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, and I think the unreliability of the show is frustrating me, because like when we had Hot Shower Girl.
Oh, yeah, what's her name?
Yeah, I have a cast this year.
Jodie Turner-Smith. Melantha?
When we had Melantha get into the shower and start to become suffocated, all of a sudden we see her decapitated head enter the blood basin.
Yep.
That was just like a hallucination.
Yep. But we didn't know that till after.
that kind of stuff gets consistently frustrating for me personally, where it's like, what's real and what's not. Like, I'm okay with that for a little bit, but at a certain point, I have to be told what's going on.
But I think that's going to be the whole premise of the show, because this mind reader guy is messing with everyone's minds, right? So even with the...
Sorry to interrupt. I looked her up for you guys. It looks like her most notable ones that I can see are 310 to Yuma, Boardwalk Empire, and Mozart
Boardwalk
in the Jungle.
Empire.
Boardwalk.
And
okay.
Mozart. That's
She played Nina Robertson in Mozart in the Jungle, and she also just was in the recent TV series Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah, Yellowstone.
All of those things. Thank you.
Yeah. Which we covered here on TV Pilot Reviews.
Yes, Mozart. I was on that panel.
Nice. So yeah, as much as these characters might be frustrating me, I think the performers are all doing a game job.
Absolutely.
Here.
Agreed. 100%. I don't know. Like I said, only one, Gretchen was the only one that was familiar to me.
Yeah. I think specifically for me, what I want to see this show do is just have more of a reason to exist. Like, I'm kind of like, okay, these people are on this ship, bad things are happening. What else? Like,
yeah, the only way we're going to care about it is if we know what their storyline is. Besides, like, you're saving the Earth, why were you guys chosen specifically? Like, why do I need a biologist, a psychologist, and then some random captain that only appears as a telegram?
Right.
And then why do I need a I get you're going to space, but why are you the only one that's modified to survive space travel? Do you know what I mean? Like, some
exactly.
of those, it has to make sense. So,
right.
like, if there's something in the future, the deep space, and only this Melantha character can survive it, then why are you all on the ship then?
Right. And why do I care if these people die a little bit? You know, because clearly the show is setting them up all to get kind of a slasher type of... But I'm like, in a great slasher, it's like you have like the geeky algebra kid and you have the virgin. And like, I don't really know who these people are, even after an hour of watching the show. So I don't know. I think I'm a little frustrated by this show.
Fair enough.
But if you guys are watching it and it gets better, let me know. Again, I sort of liked it in like a campy B-movie type of way where like I was sort of on the edge of my seat with these thrills. But here's what I think it is. Again, we're in peak television, and the fact that within a 2-week period, I have multiple options for an 8-person cast stranded on a ship with an ominous presence. There's just so much TV to choose. Why would I pick this show?
And why would I pick this over Origin, I wonder?
Right.
Because even Origin, even though the stories are different, Origin at least gives you this backstory of the character so you can kind of care about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, which we did have the family. We did have like the fact that he was leaving his family with the one character. They're trying.
But, okay, that's true. But we didn't really get a backstory. All we know is that he's married and he has a kid, and that kid is dead.
Right. Well, maybe.
Well, the kid's dead.
The kid's for sure dead.
That's a hologram, right? And yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but...
Well, that's the things with these shows. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like if at any point you can just chalk it up to like a hallucination.
Oh, it could be a hallucination, right?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, oh.
And like, why is he the only one that gets to see like his history? Do you know what I mean? With those laser
That was a really
beams.
cool scene. Like, I think like scene by scene, I was like into this, and it ended, and I was kind of like, huh?
It's a cool scene, but why him?
Yeah.
Like, why not the captain or the girl that almost got her head cut off? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, why is this important?
Yeah.
In the scheme of things.
Why was just a big thing for me throughout this whole pilot.
Fair.
I think, like, that would be the thesis statement for me on this show.
Like, why?
Yeah, why? So maybe the show continues to answer those questions. As a pilot, I'm a little lukewarm. It sounds like you are too. But again, let us know what you're thinking in the comments. We always like to discuss how these shows are being released. So let's go ahead and have that conversation now. This is a 10-episode event. I think that's what they would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's airing every night on SyFy for 10 sequential days.
Yeah, till December 13th.
So, Linda.
Yes.
Do you think they're trying to grab a binge audience or burn the show?
That's what I'm trying to... Have you seen this before in anything
Once.
else? In what?
Angie Tribeca.
I don't even know what that is.
It's a show I love on TBS. It's such a silly, deliberately stupid show. It's kind of like The Naked Gun or like Get Smart. Like it's a on the nose type of airplane humor cop show with Rashida Jones plays the lead.
Oh, I like Rashida Jones. Is
She's
that
really
30 minutes or is it an hour?
It's 30 minutes. A 30-minute comedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
An hour every... And I mean, I'm not talking about like, DVR, TVR, whatever you guys call it. But I'm saying, am I going to commit to every single day?
Well, audiences are not right now. The premiere about 700,000 people watched. The next one, about 400,000 people watched. The week after, about 390,000 people watched. So they're sequentially losing viewers.
Week after or days after?
Day after.
Okay,
Each
so
day,
each
they've
day.
lost.
Okay.
They've lost viewers.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I think that it sounds more like burn than binge, because if you think about binging, part of the reason you say, hey, I'm going to stay and, not do anything all day and just watch the show is because you're already there and sucked in.
Right.
But if I'm there and then I spend an hour and then I go do other things or watch other TV shows, if I wasn't sucked in, I may not come back.
Right. Well, interestingly, Netflix is actually co-producing the show, and they owe the second air rights. So
Yes.
I think even probably right now internationally, it's maybe already dropped on Netflix.
On Netflix, yeah. So that's an interesting little
They're
tidbit.
trying. They're doing everything they can, I think, to grab people. So I don't know. I think ultimately, I've said this a couple of times on the show, but one of my problems with like this 10 episode long, like basically like 10 episode movie is like the episodes don't own their own individual identity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough for me because like I don't think anything about episode 1 necessarily had a unique story that took me from the beginning to the end, besides just being a very small part of a larger story. And if you're going to serialize television, I would prefer to see at least some kind of contained narrative within an episode.
You said that before, yes.
And I just don't feel like this show is doing that. When it doesn't do that, I'm kind of like, why this format? Why this medium? Why this delivery mechanism? It's hard to justify. And do we need 10 episodes? It just, I feel like inevitably this will always feel padded. If there's no real reason to be telling this story episodically, besides it's a long movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that, because again, for this specific show, I don't even know what it was about. Like the title, All That We Left Behind, that says like you would think that the title is telling you something. You left behind on Earth, or you left behind on the ship, or I don't know. But then I also do remember thinking Game of Thrones, that first episode, I had no idea what was going on. But I had no idea what was going on because there were so many characters. And I wasn't familiar with them yet. This is not that.
Right.
There's, I know all the characters right now. I could close my eyes and tell you this is what this person does, but I still don't care about it.
Yeah. So, sounds like we're on the same page.
But I recommend it.
I do. I know.
do.
For people who love this kind of TV,
Yes.
I think it's a fairly well-made show. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I like seeing sort of shows like this succeed because these are less well-known actors who are putting great work on screen.
Yes.
There's a well-shot, great production design.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot that this show has going for it. I'm just not sure it's for either Linda or I.
Yeah, it's visually appealing. I did read something, or I think it might have been at the end of this. I heard it. I'll say that George took the sci-fi horror challenge, where he was saying that sometime in the 70s he was told that sci-fi and horror could not correlate, and so he took it as a personal challenge. So that's what this is become for him. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, will they make it to the aliens? Will they save Earth? It's not to be known until December 13th when the final episode of this show drops. So, as we mentioned, guys, even though Linda and I weren't super hot on this pilot, some of you guys are probably loving it, which is great. So if you feel that way, let us know why in the comments. We love hearing your guys' opinions, even if you disagree with us. Remember, this is a free country, and disagreement is a beautiful thing.
That's right.
We'll hop in the comments and respond if you guys have some interesting things to say. And if you love the show, it might incentivize the producers here to greenlight an after show for you.
There you go.
We have a lot of great sci-fi coverage here, and we have a good relationship with that network. So let us know what you think. Linda, let's rate this pilot.
You first.
I was gonna say 2.5, but it looked good, so I'm gonna give it a 2.6.
Yeah, visually it's beautifully shot. Pilot. Oof. I think I'm gonna go 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
And that's visual mostly, and the acting.
Yeah.
I think the actors did a good job.
And it's like, again, scene by scene, it's exciting.
Yeah.
But just doesn't really come together as a whole.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we mentioned some things, if this, then that. If you liked Origin, I definitely recommend this show.
You might think it was the same show.
Yeah. That being said, a movie like Aliens, I think definitely it's like the ominous presence affecting a crew.
Yep.
I'm sure. Excuse me. I think like the empath kind of has some 11 from Stranger Things vibes.
Oh, okay.
Except there's so much affection for 11 on that show, whereas I think the writers and the creators seem to hate this kid.
Yeah.
I think that was one quickly tangent. I didn't get the impression the writers were particularly fond of these characters, and it's like you want to feel like the writers love the characters as much as you do as a viewer. I just didn't feel like there's a lot of affection for any of the people on this show.
It's probably why we felt that we didn't get to know them.
Exactly.
Or like hands off.
But maybe some Stranger Things vibes there.
Psycho.
It's a very homage-heavy show. So at least check out the pilot.
Check out the pilot.
Yeah. All right. Well, Linda,
Yes.
that's our coverage of Nightflyers.
Nightflyers it was. Guys, all across social media, Linda's so girly if you want to continue the conversation.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham. It's an interesting time of year because there's not too much new content being released around the holidays. A lot of specials, a lot of movies, but I have not discussed with our scheduling coordinator yet whether or not our show will be returning, but if I don't feel like there's any new television for us to cover, we might be taking a hiatus. We'll definitely be back in the new year, so just pay attention. We'll let you know on Twitter what's going on, but we're always here at AfterBuzz TV, so you can check us out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's at AfterBuzz TV. So until next time, guys, we'll see ya.
Bye, guys.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.